Delta Dental, which is an association of dental insurance companies, does an annual survey regarding the state of America's oral health and wellness. And according to the latest survey, some 72% of Americans say that they brush their teeth at least twice a day. That habit isn't just limited to Americans. A study last year of some 15,000 people in 15 different countries determined that 53% said that they brush their teeth twice a day, all that toothbrushing leading to a global toothpaste market that Fortune Business Insights valued at nearly $18 billion annually in 2019. But the products that we use today for our oral health are relatively new inventions, whereas teeth are as old as, well, humanity itself. And the development of these products that affect the morning routines of billions of people worldwide deserves to be remembered. Alan Cooper, director of the Australian Centre for Ancient DNA, told St. Louis Public Radio in 2013 that hunter-gatherers had really good teeth. This might seem to be a surprise, as NPR notes. Prehistoric humans didn't have toothbrushes, they didn't have floss or toothpaste, and they certainly didn't have Listerine. Yet somehow their mouths were a lot healthier than ours are today. But around 12,000 years ago, there was a significant shift in the way people lived. In what has been called the Neolithic Revolution, humans started developing systems for producing food rather than relying on hunting and gathering, and people started living in agricultural communities that would eventually grow into cities and civilizations. This change had huge impacts on human society and culture, and one surprising effect was on our teeth. Cooper notes, as soon as you get to farming populations, you see this massive change. Huge amounts of gum disease and cavities start cropping up. The reason, a 2013 study in the journal Nature Genetics argues, has to do with bacteria. The study, entitled Sequencing Ancient Calcified Dental Plaque, shows changes in oral microbiota with dietary shifts of the Neolithic and Industrial Revolutions, determined that data from 34 early European skeletons indicate that the transition from hunter-gatherer to farming shifted the oral microbial community to a disease-associated configuration. Put simply, as the human diet changed, suddenly tooth decay became an issue. NPR explains that the researchers found that as prehistoric humans transitioned from hunting and gathering to farming, certain types of disease-causing bacteria that were particularly efficient at using carbohydrates started to win out over other types of friendly bacteria in human mouths, adding that the addition of processed flour and sugar during the Industrial Revolution only made matters worse. While the findings have relevance to oral health today, with Cooper arguing that understanding the mouth's microbiome is as important as brushing and flossing, one implication is that oral hygiene only became an issue at the time that people started settling in communities, a point that some see as part of the dividing line between history and prehistory. That is, the need for brushing and flossing is not as old as humanity, but is as old as human history. And early civilizations recognized the problem. The website of the Sindek Museum of the University of Michigan School of Dentistry notes that the first known written mention of oral hygiene dates back more than 5,000 years, when Assyrian cuneiform medical texts mentioned teeth cleaning procedures. Toothpicks dating back to this time have been found in other sites in Mesopotamia. If you were wondering what came first, toothpaste or the toothbrush, the website of toothpaste manufacturer Colgate argues that Egyptians used a paste to clean their teeth around 5000 BC, even before toothbrushes were invented. The website Realm of History writes that the world's oldest known formula for a toothpaste unsurprisingly comes from Egypt. To that end, a papyrus dating from circa 4th century AD contains the recipe for what has been described by the ancient scribe as powder for white and perfect teeth that transformed into a clean toothpaste. The website explains that the recipe calls for 1 drachma of rock salt, 1 drachma of mint, and 1 drachma of the dried iris flower, all mixed with around 20 grains of pepper. According to the document, the composition should form a paste-like consistency when in contact with the saliva of the mouth. The website goes on to say that the formula was tested by modern dentists and the results noted at a dental conference in 2003. Austrian dentist Dr. Heinz Neumann reported there that nobody in the dental profession had any idea that such an advanced toothpaste formula of this antiquity existed. I believe that this recipe would have been a big improvement on some of the soap toothpastes used much later. Ancient toothpaste mixtures could be both more exotic and, especially in the case of Greeks and Romans, more abrasive. Writing in a 1947 edition of the Journal of History of Medicine and Allied Sciences, physician and medical historian T.G.H. Drake listed the recipe of 1st century Roman naturalist Pliny. the ash of a mixture of barley, salt, and honey, fig tree ashes, powder or ash of hartshorn, bone ash mixed with myrrh, ashes of hare's head, with or without the ash of mice and rats' heads, ash of ankle bones of goats and other four-footed domestic beasts, or calcined eggshell to make the teeth look white and the breath smell sweet. A 2014 edition of the South China Morning Post notes that from the earliest times, the Chinese knew that gargling with salt water, tea, or wine after meals helped prevent tooth decay because of the antiseptic properties of these liquids. Records of the Grand Historian, completed around 94 BC, recounts an episode of a doctor tending to a patient suffering from tooth decay, and one of the reasons given for the ailment was that he did not gargle after eating. It isn't clear when tooth powders were first introduced in China, but the Morning Post notes that they were being sold in shops by the Song period around 1000 AD. The Post writes that toothpastes were made by adding water to various ingredients and boiling the concoction until it was reduced to a paste. The Post lists the ingredients of a 1390 recipe for tooth powder: soap bean, ginger, bug bane, Chinese foxglove, false daisy, seed pod of the Japanese pagoda tree, wild ginger, lotus leaves, and rock salt. While these early versions of toothpaste might have been applied by finger or with cloth, they were also applied using the precursor to the modern toothbrush, the chew stick. In the 2013 book Dental Biotribology, professor of prosthodontics Haiyang Yu of the West China School of Sichuan University writes that the toothbrush seems to have had its origins in the chewing sticks of Babylonia as early as 3500 BC. Ancient Greek and Roman literature discuss the use of toothpicks, which are used to keep the mouth clean. Over the years, the toothpick evolved into a chew stick, which was the size of a pencil. Records from China around 1600 BC show that one end was chewed until it became brush-like, while the other end was pointed and used as a toothpick. Despite their ancient origins, chew sticks are still used in many parts of the world today. ScienceAlert.com explains that many people in the Middle East and some parts of South and Southeast Asia use twigs from the arak tree to clean their teeth. An article in a 2009 edition of the Internet Journal of Family Practice notes that these plants are very carefully selected for such properties as foaminess, hardiness, or bitterness, and certain species are more popular than others. A great number of these plant species have related medical properties that may be antibacterial. Science Alert notes that the wood of the arak tree has a high concentration of fluoride and other antimicrobial components that prevent tooth decay. The article in the Internet Journal of Family Practice notes that several studies have demonstrated that the plaque-removing properties of chew sticks and conventional toothbrushes are similar, and in fact chew sticks may be superior to conventional toothbrushes in some respects. However, other studies suggest that chew sticks can abrade the gums and contribute to gum recession. But brushes similar to what we use today are older than you might think. The National Museum of American History notes that the earliest examples were likely made in China during the Tang Dynasty, between 618 and 907 AD. They can still be seen at institutions like the Shanghai Museum. In time, thanks in large part to itinerant merchants and monks, news of this Asian technology arrived in the West. The museum notes that there are mentions of little brushes for making clean of the teeth being used in France, at least from the 17th century. However, Pierre Fauchard, considered by many to be the father of modern dentistry, known for his 1728 work The Surgeon Dentist, considered to be the first comprehensive dental textbook, preferred the use of a sponge rather than a brush. He argued that those that use little brushes to whiten and clean the teeth use them without knowing that these materials are too rough, and their frequent usage practiced indiscriminately destroys the gums and the teeth. This conclusion should not be surprising, as dental powders at the time often included highly abrasive materials such as brick, porcelain, pumic stone, calcined talc, and calcined aluminum. These tools for oral hygiene, many with ancient roots, developed slowly. For example, in the 18th century, abrasive powders were still commonly used for cleaning teeth, with one 1780 recipe using burnt toast. The website of Crest Toothpaste notes that it wasn't until 1824 that a dentist named Peabody began adding soap to toothpaste to ensure cleanliness. It's from here that we can note specifically when toothpaste was invented to keep mouths fresh and clean. There is dispute over exactly when toothpaste started to be produced in more modern forms. The website of New England Dental Associates credits an American dental surgeon named Washington Wentworth Sheffield, who in the 1850s created a ready-made tooth cream, which included mint extracts for flavor for use on his patients. As the story goes, Dr. Sheffield's patients would request samples of his tooth cream so frequently that he began mass-producing his product. In 1873, the Colgate Company started selling aromatic toothpaste in jars. Dr. Sheffield was credited with another innovation as well. The website Beauty Packaging notes that in 1841, American artist John Golf Rand invented a pliable metal tube to effectively hold paint. DearDoctor.com explains that Sheffield's son, Dr. Lucius Sheffield, visited Paris, where he saw artists using Rand's collapsible metal tubes for their paints and inks. In 1892, when he returned home from his visit, he shared the idea with his father. A new mechanism for packaging his father's own brand of toothpaste, creme dentifrice. The newly packaged product became a big success and was much more hygienic. In 1896, Dear Doctor continues, Colgate began packaging toothpaste in a tube, and for the last 100 plus years, patients worldwide have benefited from a tremendous selection of collapsible tube toothpaste products sold every day. Tubes were originally made of tin or lead, but Beauty Packaging notes a metal shortage caused by World War II put an end to tubes made of tin and lead, and packaging producers moved to aluminum and plastic. The aluminum was still included because, Packaging News explains, by the 1950s, manufacturers were making plastic tubes for suntan lotion. But this type of polyethylene tube reacted with toothpaste ingredients. Thus, Beauty Packaging writes, most toothpaste tubes have been made from sheets of plastic laminate, which is usually a combination of various plastics surrounded by a thin layer of aluminum that works to protect the taste and formula of the product inside. Another change came in 1945 when Dental Associates of New England writes, soap was finally removed from toothpaste and replaced with different ingredients such as sodium lauryl sulfate to create an emulsified paste. Another innovation was the addition of fluoride, which research on water supply suggested strengthened tooth enamel. The National Inventors Hall of Fame writes that researchers Joseph Mueller and William Nebergall tested fluoride compounds to determine which was the most effective hardening and protective agent for tooth enamel. In the 1950s, the Hall of Fame writes, the team introduced a formulation containing stannous fluoride. Shortly thereafter, the product was licensed to Procter & Gamble, and stannous fluoride toothpaste was introduced in limited test markets in 1955. In 1956, Procter & Gamble introduced Crest toothpaste, and by the late 1970s, the Hall of Fame writes, a steep nationwide decline in cavities was attributed in part to the widespread use of fluoride toothpaste. Today, all toothpaste with the ADA seal of acceptance must contain fluoride. Curiously, these developments did not necessarily convince Americans to concern themselves with oral hygiene. Writing on the website Medium in 2013, author Lailat Vyas notes that at the turn of the century, despite the nation's dental problems, just 7% of Americans brushed their teeth. As a result, Vyas writes, there was an army of door-to-door salesmen hawking dubious tooth powders and elixirs, most of them going broke. The national habit of brushing our teeth was the result, Vyas notes, of the legendary ad man Claude C. Hopkins. Approached by a friend who wanted to sell a toothpaste called Pepsodent, Hopkins, famous for using psychology to sell, focused on a trigger of tooth film, telling consumers just run your tongue across your teeth and you'll feel a film, and that's what makes your teeth look off color and invites decay. Note how many pretty teeth are seen everywhere. Millions are using a new method of teeth cleansing. Why would any woman have dingy film on her teeth? Pepsodent removes that film. While tooth film is actually quite natural and has nothing to do with dingy teeth, Hopkins' connection between Pepsodent and beauty was a natural trigger. Writing in his book The Power of Habit, author Charles Duhigg notes that Hopkins' greatest contribution would be helping to create a national toothbrushing habit. Before Pepsodent, almost no Americans brushed their teeth. A decade after Hopkins' advertising campaigns, pollsters found that toothbrushing had become a daily ritual for more than half the population. While the formulation of toothpaste developed over the 19th century, toothbrushes hardly changed. For example, the first U.S. patent for a toothbrush by H.M. Wadsworth in 1857 separated the bristles more than the common brush, but was still made using boar's hair. The Cavendish Vermont Historical Society notes that mass production of toothbrushes didn't occur in the United States until 1885. The society notes that toothbrushes were not issued to Civil War soldiers and were expensive, and thus without a toothbrush they would have used whatever was handy: rags, salt, a finger, leaves, and probably a chewing stick. That is, Civil War soldiers were taking care of their teeth in much the same way that soldiers did in ancient Rome. The Library of Congress notes that boar bristles were used until 1938, when nylon bristles were introduced by the DuPont Company. The first nylon toothbrush was called Dr. West's Miracle Toothbrush. While the use of objects like toothpicks to clean between teeth dates back to ancient times, dental floss is a relatively new invention. A 1999 edition of the Journal of the History of Dentistry credits the invention of dental floss to New Orleans dentist Dr. Levi Spear in 1815. He used a wax and silk thread and extolled the importance of flossing in his 1819 work, A Practical Guide to the Management of Teeth. The website of Oral-B explains that the idea caught on, and in 1882, a company called the Codman and Shirtlick Company, based in Randolph, Massachusetts, began marketing an unwaxed silk dental floss. This was followed in 1896 by the first dental floss from Johnson & Johnson. The New Jersey-based J&J took out a patent for dental floss in 1898 that was made from the same silk material used by doctors for silk stitches. The website ABC Science describes how the product has developed since. During the Second World War, Dr. Charles C. Bass, a medical doctor, realized that nylon would have advantages over silk as a flossing material. Nylon could be produced in great lengths, which all had a consistent diameter, could be supplied in different sizes, and had greater resistance to abrading and shredding than silk. Wax-coated dental floss was introduced in the 1940s, and dental floss in the shape of a tape rather than the thread was introduced in the 1950s. This was followed by flavored flosses such as mint and cinnamon, and more recently, various suprasynthetics such as Gore-Tex and Teflon are being incorporated into dental floss. By 1996, Americans purchased over 4.3 million kilometers of dental floss per year. Oral healthcare products have continued to develop. Heck, all you have to do is look at the aisle in your local grocery store to see the number of different kinds of toothbrush and toothpaste that are available. Today you can buy toothpaste that do things like whiten your teeth or reduce dental sensitivity or remove tartar or prevent the development of plaque for 12-hour periods, as well as a more recent trend towards more natural or organic toothpastes that use fewer things like chemical stabilizers or perfumes or flavors. Still, despite the advances in technology, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control noted last year that nearly 1 in 4 American adults have untreated tooth decay, and 46% show signs of gum disease. A 2022 World Health Organization report notes that it is estimated that oral diseases affect nearly 3.5 billion people. The report concludes, oral diseases, while largely preventable, pose a major health burden for many countries and affect people throughout their lifetime, causing pain, discomfort, disfigurement, and even death. Dentists today recommend that you should brush for at least 2 minutes twice a day with a fluoride toothpaste. And New York dentist Lena Rosenberg told Yahoo Health that it's very important that you brush in the morning to get rid of bacteria and in the evening after a full day of eating, drinking, and accumulating plaque. And in addition, the American Dental Association recommends that you floss at least once a day. I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of The History Guy, and if you did, please feel free to like and subscribe and share The History Guy with your friends. And if you also believe that history deserves to be remembered, then you can support The History Guy as a member on YouTube, a supporter on our community at Locals, or as a patron on Patreon. You can also check out our great merchandise shop or book a special message from The History Guy on Cameo.